Ashley Brogan says she was a prisoner inside the trailer where she lived with her abusive boyfriend and his parents. When she finally told Willie Hale she was leaving, he didn't let her go on her own.
No, he stabbed her and then dragged her out into the woods by her hair. What he didn't know is that a deputy sheriff was on his way.
WSLS 10's Angela Hatcher has the incredible rescue as seen by the deputy that day. Angela?
John and Lindsay, on August 29th, 2015, Ashley Brogan told Willie Hale she was leaving him. She called her mom to come get her, and as soon as she hung up, Willie stabbed her. Her parents got text messages from her phone telling them not to come, but words weren't spelled out like Ashley would type them, so they knew those texts were from Willie. Her mom called police, and her dad met Sergeant Jeremy Gardner at the home.
Where could they have gone, sir?
Getting no straight answer from the suspect's father and facing a path that was anything but straight, Sergeant Jeremy Gardner takes off from the back porch of 1284 Breezy Hill Road.
I wasn't going to let any grass grow underneath me. I was determined to find them. I knew that they hadn't left at the front. I knew that they hadn't taken a vehicle. I knew that the only path or the travel that they could have taken was on foot.
Wearing shorts to go on bike patrol that late summer afternoon, Sergeant Gardner will use his bare legs, eyes, and intuition to get through the dense woods in front of him. His body camera captures every step. 2 minutes in, there's an open cattle gate.
I could see where saplings had been folded over, or either a large deer or persons had walked along a path. I would get to where there would be no grass, it would be dirt, but there wasn't any signs of footprints. So I would come to a fork and I would have to figure out which way did they go. And it would either be me walking to a point where there was grass and I should be able to tell whether there's disturbance or not, or I'd run into a spider web. Well, certainly, I'm running into spider webs. Nobody went that way.
Things he learned to look for hunting, not through some advanced training. He's not looking down for blood drops. In fact, he doesn't even know Willie Hale stabbed Ashley Brogan. He looks out at these woods, every bit a labyrinth.
Exactly like a maze. Come to an end, have to turn around and come back.
After roughly 9 minutes of rough terrain and dead ends,
I see you.
He sees Ashley Brogan is alive, but not well. Her attacker tries to regain control of the situation.
On your knees. On your knees. I'm not going to ask you again. Stop talking to her. He's trying to talk to her, and I'm not having it.
Sergeant Gardner pulls the knife from Hale's pocket. With Hale in handcuffs and Ashley faint and covered in blood, he radios dispatch.
I am going to need some assistance. It's going to be a long walk, and just trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. It was a logistical nightmare for me. I don't know how I'm going to be able to get her out of there. I don't know how I'm going to be able to coordinate rescue to find us. I know that I'm not going to trust him just to walk out of this quarter-mile trail with me. He's walking with me. Okay. I've got my hand on. Bev, we're trying to make our way out this time. She's saying that she can walk now. You okay, ma'am? She thought she could stay. No, ma'am. I'd like you to stay a little bit behind.
A safe distance from Hale.
Ashley, tell him I didn't.
You're being detained. Stop talking, please. You understand? You have the right to remain silent?
They reach the yard. Okay. Sergeant Gardner gets Hale into the patrol car. An ambulance arrives. Ashley is able to speak without Willie Hale telling her what to say or do.
And he told me when you was coming, he said, if you move or you say anything, he said, I'm going to stab you. He said, don't move and don't say anything. And then he put the knife right there, and I knew if you wouldn't tell us what was going to happen.
I could have not found them. I could have came to a wall of spider webs, if you will, and realized that I was on the wrong path the entire time and been followed some deer.
Whether he knew it at the time, Sergeant Gardner was on the right path to save Ashley. Now she's well on her way to saving herself, and she hopes other women from domestic abuse.
One puncher here.
Ashley Brogan is living proof you can't keep a good woman down, though Willie Hale tried his hardest.
He was sitting at me with the knife, and so I couldn't move, I couldn't say anything. So, yeah, it was pretty scary.
Paralyzed by fear in the woods, shivering in a blood-covered sundress, they stopped here because Ashley couldn't go any farther.
I got my first 3 stab wounds in the house, and then after that, he dragged me out the door. He's dragged me by my hair. the whole entire time that we were going from the house to the woods, his intentions was killing me. He told me, he said, if you're not going to be with me, I'm going to kill you. I asked him, I said, I'm going to die. And he said, who cares?
Her parents cared, enough for her mom to call police, enough for her dad to show up at the trailer where Ashley had been living with Hale and his parents.
When I was in the woods, I heard a horn blow. And I didn't say anything because I knew if I'd have said anything, he'd probably killed me. But as I was in the woods, I heard the horn beep. And I was thinking in my head, that's my dad, thank God.
Next to arrive, Sergeant Jeremy Gardner.
Where could they have gone, sir?
After asking Hale's dad questions and getting absolutely nowhere, video from his body camera shows him getting to Ashley and her attacker. It took him roughly 9 minutes through rough terrain and dense woods.
Willie was the one that peeked around the tree, and he was like, oh, crap. He was like, if you make any sudden moves or make any noises, I'm gonna kill you.
I see you.
Willie Hale once had a way with words with Ashley. He talked her into watering down a story on the witness stand so he could get out of jail the last time he hurt her. Not this time.
Ashley, tell him I need
You're
to
being
do that.
detained. Stop talking, please.
So now Hale knows how that feels, and the woman who he forced to stay quiet or change her story is speaking up, hoping her words will encourage other women to go from silent to survivor.
As soon as, I started seeing the signs, I wish I'd have got away a lot faster than I did. That was my mess up, but, you live and learn, and I've definitely learned a lot from this whole situation. Get to know whoever you're with a lot better than I did, because the whole entire 2 years that I was with him, I was a punching bag. This wasn't the only incident. He busted my lip before, and I had to get 7 stitches. People like Willie, they don't deserve to ever be on the streets again, because there is going to be another victim, and it may not be as good of an outcome as I got.
She credits that outcome to another man.
Jeremy Gardner saved my life.
The video from the sergeant's body camera is so damning, Hale pleaded guilty. It was never played in court. Sergeant Gardner did not even have to testify. This is the first time Ashley's seen him since that day back in August 2015.
Can I get a hug?
Oh, yes.
It's good seeing you.
Thank you so much.
You're so very welcome.
If it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't be here.
Well, maybe it's for a reason.
That's right.
Maybe it's because you've got a story to tell and an impact to make. Very good.
Ashley hopes that impact starts with this story.
That's where WSLS 10's Rachel Lucas joins us. So, Rachel, what can you tell us about this investigation?
Well, John, Roanoke City Police tell me that they've been at this location since about 5 p.m. yesterday afternoon after Roanoke City Police detectives were told that there were potentially human remains that were being concealed in this wooded area that you see behind me. Now, I'm going to step out the way so you can see the scene here. We are here along Radford Road, as you mentioned, right next to a neighborhood. You're looking at where police have taped off this area. There is a very windy dirt road that goes back into this wooded area, and that's where investigators have been looking at all day. Now, we were here earlier today as investigators were moving in and out of this area, carrying equipment and collecting evidence from that area. Now, we haven't seen any investigators bringing anything back up this road so far, and we're told that this could be a long process.
WSLS 10's Rachel Lucas was the only reporter at the scene today when crews recovered the remains. That was this afternoon. She tells us where the investigation goes from here.
We were the only ones on scene today as investigators were bringing up those human remains just yards away from where I'm standing, up this dirt path and through the gate. They were taken to the Roanoke Medical Examiner's office to be identified. Once the person is confirmed by the medical examiner's office, they will begin to notify the family. Just before noon Friday, bags of evidence and what we now know are human remains were brought up in this UTV. Wrapped in tarp, the remains were loaded in the medical examiner's van. Medical examiners dressed in scrubs were helping with the investigation, along with 2 forensic anthropologists from Radford University. The search started Wednesday in these woods, just a few hundred yards away from the home of Edme Morel Perez, a 38-year-old woman who's been missing since March. So far, investigators have not confirmed if their search or what they found is related to her disappearance.
Tonight, investigators in Central Virginia are putting putting pressure on Governor Terry McAuliffe to pardon a former University of Virginia student.
Jens Soering was convicted of killing his girlfriend's parents in Bedford County more than 30 years ago. A handful of law enforcement experts, including the Albemarle County Sheriff, are urging investigators to reopen the case.
It's believed to be the first time in Virginia's history an active sheriff wrote a letter to support a pardon request. WSLS 10's Allison Wickline spoke with those behind the push and joins us live in Charlottesville. So, Allison, what evidence does the sheriff believe will free Soering?
Well, the Albemarle County Sheriff teamed up with a retired investigator from the Charlottesville Police Department and a DNA expert to try and get this decades-old murder case reopened.
There's way beyond reasonable doubt in this case. This case isn't even close.
Sheriff Chip Harding is fighting for Jens Soering, a man serving life for the 1985 murders of Derek and Nancy Haysom in Bedford County. Soering is accused of murdering his girlfriend Elizabeth's parents, but Harding believes the evidence no longer supports that theory. Now Harding, along with a retired Charlottesville detective and a forensic expert, have joined forces to try and convince state or local authorities to take action and, at the very least, reopen the case.
Why not get into a review of the evidence? We have more that we could test. There's more sensitive technologies out there that could possibly help. But the bottom line is justice through science.
According to investigators, the most recent DNA report proves that the blood samples that initially matched Soering's type are not his. The profiles do not match.
Now we have a contributor of blood on the front door and a contributor of blood in the kitchen that are male contributors, and they're not Derek Haysom and they're not Jens Soering. That's irrefutable. The DNA is not wrong. So there are two strangers bleeding in that crime scene.
Hudson says Elizabeth, who was convicted of accessory before the fact, has inconsistencies in her story that are cause for concern. He, along with the other investigators, also believe some of the original evidence was disregarded or not given enough thought by the Bedford County Sheriff's Office. Harding says the Bedford County Sheriff's Office has made it clear that the case will not be reopened, but he is holding out hope that Governor Terry McAuliffe may view the full evidence and pardon Soering. We have reached out to the Bedford County Sheriff's Office and the Governor's Office. We have not heard back at this time.
Allison, I'm just curious, this is a case that has made headlines for years. I remember when it broke back in the late 80s. So what specifically are investigators hoping that Governor McAuliffe will or can do at this point?
Well, they are hoping that Soering will get a conditional pardon and then be sent back to Germany. They're also hoping it will kind of be a ripple effect, that once he's pardoned, the case will then have to be reopened. Live in Charlottesville, Allison Wickline, WSLS 10.
All right, thank you, Allison. A local woman has filed a lawsuit against Golden Corral in Roanoke after she says she was mistreated at the restaurant last month. She says she and her family were wrongfully accused of stealing food from the Golden Corral during a birthday dinner for her daughter. WSLS 10's Irisha Jones joins us from Roanoke after hearing from Leah Williams and her attorneys for the first time today. Irisha?
Well, Leah Williams has kept quiet until now, and Williams says her and her family has suffered public humiliation as a result of the incident last month. Williams also states her family endured racism from a manager and a waitress at Golden Corral. They're both named in the federal lawsuit in Roanoke City District Court. Williams posted video on social media showing the manager asking to see a purse after they were accused of stealing chicken from the buffet. Williams didn't say much more about the specific incident this afternoon, only that she is standing up for what is right. Her attorneys at the news conference says Williams' children are also affected by this whole situation.
That kind of experience, as you can imagine, being accused, falsely accused of stealing in front of your parents and your grandmother, just leaves a psychological trauma with you. And that's just real, you know, and as again, we'll have experts and things in the case.
Platinum Corral, Golden Corral, you have an opportunity. It isn't just about apologizing. What are you going to do to ensure this doesn't happen again? How are you going to make sure that other Black and Hispanic families don't suffer the way this family did?
The lawsuit is seeking monetary damages. A company speaking for the restaurant would not confirm if any surveillance video exists, but says its company policy is not to release surveillance video. They apologized once before through social media and offering to speak with Williams, saying the company is addressing the incident internally. Now, a lawyer for Williams says right now they haven't received any comment back from Golden Corral. Live in Roanoke, Arisha Jones, WSLS 10.
We're just over a month away from Amtrak launching rail service in Roanoke, with the first Amtrak train set to leave the Star City on Halloween. And yet police have some major concerns about how drivers will be handling the change because the train traffic is different now. WSLS 10's Jessica Jewell joins us. She's live in Roanoke. So Jessica, what are officers doing to get people ready for Amtrak?
John, they're stepping up patrols and talking to drivers to try to get this message out as soon as possible because, as you can see, Amtrak will be here before we know it.
Well, some drivers don't realize Amtrak is coming to Roanoke, and that's the people we really want to reach because they won't be looking for the trains.
As construction chugs along on the railway, Roanoke City police officers are focusing on the changes it will bring to the road.
Handing out flyers to address drivers and let them know what some of the concerns that Amtrak has for their tracks.
Concerns like drivers who aren't used to seeing trains on these tracks ignoring them.
We have done driver awareness at these locations with warnings and citations to some drivers that have completely disregarded the barricades and the crossings.
The main issue:
we have 2 or 3 major crossings there that have no arms that guard those crossings.
Several crossings along Campbell Avenue only have these flashing lights.
The ones with no arms, they just will refuse to look at the lights because they'll be looking down or looking at something else, drive through the tracks and be struck by a slow-moving train.
It's something drivers are worried about too.
Their biggest concerns are school buses, family vans, larger vehicles being struck by trains.
As Amtrak continues test runs through the area to get ready to launch full service, police tell us they're continuing their efforts to make sure everyone stays safe on the rails and on the roads.
It's hard to stop a train. A train running at full speed takes a mile to stop.
He come down, he got a perfect angel.
The June 2016 flood brought loss to White Sulphur Springs. Loss of homes, loss of memories, loss of loved ones. Ronnie Scott knows loss. As floodwaters ravaged Mill Hill Drive, his house exploded. His wife Belinda inside. She fought to live, but in the end, the burns were just too much for her body to handle.
So I walk up beside the bed, and I can't touch her, the bed, or nothing. You know, I said, Belinda, I love you.
I found Ronnie June 24th in shock from what had happened. Being from White Sulphur Springs myself, I knew Ronnie, knew Belinda, knew how hard this loss would be for him and his family to overcome.
I know she...
You're okay.
She smiled down on me all day long.
But sometimes, in the midst of our hardest trials, we do overcome. The tree Belinda clung to for hours is now a memorial, part of Paisley Park. And Ronnie is getting ready to move into his new home in Hope Village.
It's a work in progress. And, you know, I've been a mechanic all my life, and it's kind of hard for me to pick out window blinds and curtains and bedspreads, and, you know, I never had to do that. That was always Belinda's department.
But Ronnie wasn't sure if White Sulphur Springs would ever be home again.
Somebody told me not too long ago that you're old White Sulphur Springs boy, and you're not going to be happy anywhere else. And he was right. He was really right.
So here we are 1 year later at a place of heartbreak where Ronnie can now come to heal.
If you could say anything, one thing to Belinda, what would you say to her?
Hey, first thing I do is tell her I love her, I miss her, and I know one thing, she'll never be forgotten.
What a story.
Wow.
It's amazing. From the beginning, I mean, I saw him June 24th, did a couple follow-up stories. and then to come back again a year later, it's amazing to follow.
I know it's hard for you personally to be able to go there and to see that and tell that story.
It is, but I think it helped both of us. You know, he always says that I helped him, and he helped me kind of get through it and navigate how to do the story. So I appreciate all of that.
Well, it's good perspective from somebody who lived there.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, thank you, and thank you to Ronnie for sharing the story.
Of course. Of course.
So many people across the country are dying from opioid overdoses that organ donations are actually at a record high.
Drug overdoses are now one of the leading causes of death in organ donors, especially among young people.
WSLS 10's Rachel Lucas went to the United Network for Organ Sharing headquarters in Richmond and found in the past decade alone, organ donors who have died from drug overdoses have increased by 500%.
Here in Richmond at the headquarters of UNOS, death is simply a part of living. Through the work done here, from tragedy also comes the gift of life.
This is a blessing for them, but clearly it comes as a result of a tragedy for somebody else.
The tragic killer that's now claiming more lives than ever before is overdosing, especially on opioids.
I think it's something that surprises a lot of people. Because clearly people think of organ donation and typically they think of traumatic accidents, but now drug overdose is a big part of the organ donation process.
According to data collected from UNOS, here in Virginia, overdosing is ranked as the third most prominent cause of death among organ donors. This year alone, they make up 12.8% of causes of death among donors. That number has increased dramatically over the past decade.
In terms of causes of death for organ donation, it's now larger than automobile accidents.
A statistic that Dr. Klassen, the chief medical officer at UNOS, says is unprecedented growth.
It's a 500% increase compared to 10 years ago.
500%, that's huge.
It's huge.
A trend they really started to notice 4 years ago. Klassen said it started in New England, spread through Appalachia, then to the upper Midwest, now claiming the lives of those all across the country. Just outside UNOS is a National Donor Memorial lined with yellow roses, the official flower of a donor. Putting a face to that statistic, here we are reminded that those numbers are people, family, friends. These names engraved on the wall represent the thousands who, in death, allow someone else to live. It puts a changed perspective on donation.
And here in the memorial, this is what's known as the grove. For every drop that comes from this fountain, that's meant to represent the life-saving gift of organ donation. And we now know that more young people are giving their organs, not because of a traumatic incident, but because they essentially are taking their own lives due to accidental overdoses.
I think anytime there's almost a bittersweet that goes with organ donation.
Well, that's actually true under all circumstances, but I think it's especially, notable under the situation of an overdose death of a young person.
Because of the opioid crisis, it's the first time in recorded history that there's a surplus of young organ donors. Despite overdosing, Klassen says their organs are still quite viable.
A lot of people don't understand that people dying of overdoses can become donors. And in fact, they are very good and appropriate donors in many respects. They tend to be younger, and they tend actually not to have a lot of other illnesses associated with them, such as diabetes or heart disease, because they are a younger group of people as a general rule.
I think that's interesting. There's a stigma that follows addiction in life and in death.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. Donation under these circumstances has a bit of a stigma attached to it because of the possibility of disease transmission, although very, very low. And I think dying from an overdose there is some stigma attached to that. So I think one of our goals is to try to get awareness out that, in fact, these donors are really appropriate and can be used very, very successfully and can prolong somebody's life or save somebody's life.
Safety remains a priority. All organs are inspected by doctors before being given to another person. Klassen says the risk of viral transmission is less than 0.1%. Through a tragic epidemic sweeping the country, killing tens of thousands each year, others are ironically being saved. For many families, that gift of life comes as the only comfort after losing someone to addiction.
It is clearly a sad, it's a very tragic situation for a lot of families, for the entire country. But I think if, we look at it as, kind of getting a little bit of good out of what is clearly a bad situation.
Well, there's no question the good a selfless act like becoming an organ donor can bring to others. Many are facing that reality at a much younger age than needed to, meaning that the rise in available organs to those in need is sadly only a silver lining in a much larger and growing epidemic.
Something you may take for granted, but there are more than 800 children right now who are up for adoption in Virginia looking for a family to call their own.
And tonight, 10 News is launching a special project called 30 Days of Hope. Our goal is to connect a child with a loving family.
10 News reporter Jenna Zipton explains the need and how we're working to find a perfect match for 30 children.
Emily Smith is curious, loves science, and is into fashion. She's just like any other 12-year-old, but Emily wants a family.
I like to explore more and new things. I like to try new foods. I like to discover new cultures.
She came into the foster care system at age 8 and has lived with 2 families over the last 5 years.
Emily came into foster care for the same reason that all of our children come in, because her parents were unable to care for her at the time and provide her with a safe and secure environment.
DePaul Community Resources adoption specialist Julie Vance has been working to find her a family.
She's been in a warm, nurturing home for a good extended amount of time to help her heal and be prepared to be adopted by her forever family. She tells me over and over she'd like somebody young, that she would like someone that would travel, do exciting things with her. She wants to have fun. She's very energetic.
More than 5,000 children in Virginia are currently in foster care, and nearly 900 are available for adoption right now. Many of these children are older or siblings waiting in the system, in danger of turning 18 without a family to support them in their adult years.
These kids are just like any other kids. They have great attributes. They have things to offer. They're funny. They're fun-loving. They want someone to love them. They want a home. They want a community to call their own.
I was adopted when I was 3.
Debbie Johnson is with Connecting Hearts. The organization works with agencies and families across Virginia, hoping to match them together.
I was one of the lucky ones. And when I think what my life might have been and what my life actually is, I can't even imagine.
10 News is partnering with Connecting Hearts to highlight a local child every day and raise awareness for the hundreds that may never be seen, like a case she saw firsthand.
In walks a woman carrying a bassinet, 2 twins, 3 months old, that were just dropped off at the emergency room. The diagnosis was failure to thrive. No one was feeding them. No one was holding them. And I just cringe.
That's one story, but there are so many more. Children just like Emily who need a permanent, loving home.
It'd be nice if they had a home to stay in, people that love them.
Take the chance, reach out, don't be afraid. It's very, very rewarding, and you could change someone's life.
Over the next 30 days, we'll show you one child who needs a home. These are children from Southwest Virginia who need special people in their life, a family to call their own. The first child is a teen. He's a goal setter and looking forward to getting his learner's permit, getting a part-time job, and saving money to buy a car to fix up. Meet Briar. The 17-year-old has a great sense of humor and enjoys reading and playing video games. Briar has aspirations of joining the military, possibly the Army. Because of his diligent nature, Briar was selected to attend a statewide youth conference for independent living. He does these activities because he knows they will prepare him for adulthood. Briar is seeking a forever family who will be supportive and encouraging so he can achieve his life's goals. Briar is just one of 30 children we're featuring during 30 Days of Hope, trying to find families for the hundreds of kids in foster care across Virginia in danger of aging out of the system without a family. If you would like to adopt Briar, go to WSLS.com and click on 30 Days of Hope. You'll find all the information you need for Connecting Hearts. Jenna Zipton, 10 News, working for you.
Life has gotten a lot busier, a lot more vibrant, a lot more fun.
The contagious laughter. The daily rhythm of sisters bonding.
She just has a zeal for life.
And of course, the frequent solo. These are all new sounds that remind the Blazak family of its newest member, one they thought may never come home.
It's just surreal. I'm baffled, by it, that she's just there and here, and this is actually real.
Tom and Whitney Blazak, along with their 3 daughters, Sydney, KK, and Taylor, fought lies, international corruption, and government red tape for more than 4 years to adopt this girl from Ethiopia, whose name at the time was Tigist.
It was like we had a daughter in Africa, and we were here, and we couldn't get to her.
During the waiting period, they weren't allowed to use her real name, so they called her Hope, something they never gave up, no matter how slim their chances of adoption seemed.
That feeling never left. She was ours from the day we met her.
Whitney chronicled their often painful journey on a blog called Relentless Love. Finally, in July of 2016, as an almost 10-year-old, Tigist came home. It seemed like the perfect ending to the struggle of a lifetime to make their family complete. Tigist became Tigist Sophia Hope Blazak. She decided she wanted to go by her new middle name and/or nicknames to start her new life.
Sophia, Sophie, Fifi, like that.
But soon after the adrenaline of bringing home a new daughter began to wear off,
even though we had known her for 4 years, we didn't know her. We didn't know the ins and outs.
Real life abruptly set in. Sophia had come home to a country and a family whose language and culture were anything but familiar.
I'm talking just a little English.
It was hard, though, when you couldn't talk back to us, wasn't it? It was harder.
Yeah.
Sophia knew virtually no English, making every moment a struggle for everyone just to get by.
Showing her items, certain
Charades,
types of food.
acting things out. I mean, it really was a lot of that.
But it wasn't as fun as charades. Like, when you're playing charades, you're like playing a game and competing. This was more like, oh my gosh, what do I do here?
It's like survival.
Yeah.
The fourth sister's new place in the family required constant work and also meant a new place for the first 3 sisters. Sydney, who for 6 years was the firstborn, was suddenly no longer the oldest.
We're putting all this effort into Sophia, and I think there was a little feeling left out, or just like she didn't get any attention anymore.
There was also the mystery of Sophia's life before them. Tom and Whitney knew she came from a village called Cora, where residents lived off of a trash dump. But they didn't know the depth of her scars or how helpless they would feel as parents until one night she began to open up about private nightmares from a past without parents.
I was crying, and I was holding her and rocking her and, telling her I loved her, and I was so sorry for the things that had happened before, and there was nothing I could do about it. I can't fix it.
It was times like this, where the tears never seemed to dry, that the Blazaks resolved to love Sophia as relentlessly at home as they had when she was an ocean away.
I cried myself to sleep that night and was broken in a new way and felt this deep, desire to be her mom and to be that love that she didn't have before.
For Sophia, that feeling is mutual.
I love Mommy and Daddy.
The bond and the perseverance opened up a world of firsts for Sophia, firsts that remind Tom and Whitney why they fought so hard. Little things like waking up to a winter wonderland. Or finally getting a birthday party.
Eat cake, and my favorite food. My favorite food is pizza, and everybody come.
And even playing basketball.
She throws it up, and even if it's an air ball, she's just coming back smiling like it was the greatest thing.
That spirit, evidenced by an ever-present smile, now fuels her dream to one day become a worship singer.
Singing is like worship God, and I like worship God.
It didn't take long for this joy to steal the hearts of unsure sisters.
Hi! Hey, come on.
She wanted to be like a...
It's easy to love her.
And the hearts of just about everyone she meets.
You think that going through what she gone through, that joy would be taken away, but it's like, literally, it's in her.
It was a love story that began thousands of miles apart.
There's no way she should be here right now. This is all about what God has done.
A relentless pursuit of hope that brought Sophia hope to their living room. And where the separation ended, the real journey is only beginning.
People say, oh, she's so lucky to have you. And I'm like, no, we are lucky to have her.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm John Carlin. Tonight, we are remembering the 32 lives that were taken 10 years ago. We remember the survivors and the first responders, and we reflect on the resilience of the Virginia Tech community. Today's solemn anniversary began with light. Each year on this date, the university lights its ceremonial candle at midnight. The candle was lit by 2 students as the Virginia Tech Corps of Cadets formed up around the memorial. Following the lighting, the names of the 32 victims were read out loud.
Ross A. Alameddine.
Rima Joseph Samaha.
Caitlin Millar Hammerin.
The Corps of Cadets then stood guard for 32 minutes. A statewide moment of silence was held following the annual wreath laying at the memorial. WSLS 10's Coulter Anstead has been following the remembrance events, and he has more now on this annual tradition.
Just like past years, the wreath was placed at the memorial here on the drill field, marking the moment the shootings began. But for many, the tradition carried extra meaning this year, with this being the 10th anniversary. 10 years ago today at 9:43 a.m., a gunman went on a rampage that would leave 32 people, including himself, dead. This morning at 9:43 a.m., Governor Terry McAuliffe and university dignitaries walked from Burris Hall across the street to the memorial.
I definitely think something like that is appropriate, and I didn't expect anything less. I definitely think it reiterates the stance that, Virginia Tech means to the Commonwealth.
It was the second official commemoration event of the day. The first took place at midnight when hundreds gathered on the drill field to witness the lighting of the ceremonial candle at the memorial.
And each year it's a little bit different, but the same. And I think overall it's just a fitting way to tribute.
I think as a kid when it happened, I didn't feel like I had really that many connections to Blacksburg, but now that I'm here, it means a lot to see just how many people come out.
2 students walked from Burris Hall, lit the candle, and walked back, symbolizing the memories of those who died that will forever be with the university.
Matthew Joseph Laporte.
Jocelyn Couture Novak.
The victims' names were read, taps was played, and the Corps of Cadets stood guard for 32 minutes while those in attendance watched in solemn silence. Even the flags were still.
You don't want to have the stigma of it just being a tragedy. And this week has definitely been a week of celebration of life.
The candle here at the memorial will be extinguished at 11:59 tonight. On the campus of Virginia Tech, Coulter Anstead, WSLS 10.
As the Virginia Tech community reflects on the tragedy, the university's commemoration this afternoon highlighted the bond that still exists now a decade later. WSLS 10 has been bringing you team coverage of the anniversary all week. Our very own Rob Manch and Arisha Jones were at the ceremony today. Rob, let's start with you first. Tell us what happened.
Well, Virginia Tech President Timothy Sands and Senator Tim Kaine both spoke to the families of the 32 men and women who were killed here at Virginia Tech 10 years ago, both of them saying that while a decade has passed, neither this school nor this community will ever forget them.
In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them.
Hundreds came to the drill field Sunday to show that 32 fallen Hokies will never be forgotten.
Austin Michelle Cloyd.
For President Tim Sands, the names bring back the memories.
I remember 10 years ago watching events unfold from a distance. As a father, a university professor, and administrator.
Senator Tim Kaine recalled returning quickly from state business abroad 10 years ago to comfort the same families that sit before him today.
I think I can safely say, and I think I'll be able to forever safely say, that April 16, 2007 was the worst day of my life.
In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them.
But though the lost remain in his memory, Kaine says they help him look toward a brighter future.
And today is Easter Sunday, a day of new beginnings and new life and new hope.
And to the families, the university extended one final pledge from Hokie Nation.
We will always be here for you. We will always stand together as a community, and we will always remember.
So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are part of us. We remember them.
And coming up here in about an hour and a half, we're going to also be seeing a vigil here on the drill field to honor those 32 victims, where we'll be continuing our coverage of events here on campus tonight.
Rob, if you would, before you go, tell us a little bit about what you observed with the families during this ceremony. It must be an incredibly emotional and difficult thing to relive.
Well, it was actually amazing to see as they were listening to both President Tim Sands and Senator Tim Kaine. They had their heads held high, even as those 32 names were read along with the biographies. And it was only after the ceremony wrapped up that we started to see those tears and hugs that come along with the incredible tragedy that each of those families has had to bear. In Blacksburg, Rob Manch, WSLS 10.
Thank you, Rob. And as Rob mentioned, hundreds attended that commemoration this afternoon. Some people WSLS 10 spoke to say this tragedy, as you might expect, will always impact the community. WSLS 10's Arisha Jones continues our team coverage tonight. And Arisha, you spoke with a few people this afternoon. Tell us what they had to say.
Well, John, I spoke with people who came from Blacksburg and all over the country who say they just wanted to pay their respects on this 10-year anniversary.
For the kind words.
The drill field on campus became a gathering place for those honoring the 32 people who died April 16th, 10 years ago.
This is my first time being at a commemoration event. I've always watched it from TV. Both my parents are Hokies, so this event really hits home for me.
During the university commemoration, Senator Tim Kaine spoke about the strength and spirit Virginia Tech continues to show. Embracing each other, those in the crowd say the mood was somber at times, but Kaine's message to the people was uplifting, helping to band the communities closer.
It's cool that he felt the need to be close to this community when he was so far away.
It really brought to light when Senator Kaine said that we weren't quick to blame, we were quick to come together as a nation, and I feel that's what Hokie Nation's all about.
English and French major.
One by one, the names and biographies of the 32 victims were read aloud, some people learning about them for the first time.
I hadn't really known a lot about them, but after hearing their bios and after hearing Senator Kaine speak, I feel a lot more connected with them and the events that happened and know that we can all move forward together.
Coming to the commemoration was about showing support for those who continue to mourn and heal.
Being here this year and seeing how everyone's been coming together this weekend and everyone's been there for each other, for anyone who needs support, has just really made me feel even more at home here. And I know that the Hokie Nation will always take care of everyone in the Hokie Nation.
And the crowd displayed just how proud to be part of the Hokie Nation. wearing shirts like "We Are Virginia Tech" and "Hokies United." After the commemoration, everyone was allowed to visit the April 16th memorial as it was closed off for most of the day. Live here at Virginia Tech, Arisha Jones, WSLS 10.
Thank you, Arisha. And as Rob mentioned just before, Arisha, tonight a candlelight vigil will take place at 7:30 this evening. 32 candles will be lit from that same candle that was lit at midnight. The flame will then be passed around, lighting all the candles at the vigil. Tonight's event features a cappella singers, student speakers, and it ends with 32 minutes of silence.
It's remembering all the people that were involved that day, all the people who lost their lives, or the people who helped save me, the first responders and the doctors.
A survivor story, why a man who was shot during the shooting says he's remained with the Virginia Tech community since that tragedy. Thousands joined the Virginia Tech community this weekend to remember the April 16th tragedy. Among them, survivor Kevin Stern, who's remained a part of the community since that day. WSLS 10's Dawn Jeffries spoke to him earlier this week.
Looking at the semicircle of Hokie stones, one for each life lost April 16th, Kevin Stern knows who he'll walk for in the Run for Remembrance Saturday.
You have the thing that says, who do you run for? And for me, it's always been Michael Pole.
The two sat next to each other in German class 10 years ago.
It's the random, 5 minutes or whatnot that you have where you're both sitting there before class starts and like, hey, did you get this homework done? Just, yeah, that was tough.
Kevin was shot twice on April 16th.
Afterwards, there were a couple of people who were, getting up and walking around or kind of checking people out, and I wasn't able to do that, and then kind of realizing, where I'd been shot and that I couldn't walk or anything like that.
A photo of 4 police officers carrying him out of Norris Hall became an iconic image of the tragedy and appeared around the world.
It certainly replays kind of that 5 to 10 second stretch of being carried out of the building and down the grass there to the ambulance. So.
Years later, the reminder remained.
Anytime there was another mass shooting or any kind of reference to it, it was tied to my name. My name would say oh, this is Kevin Stern from the Virginia Tech, April 16th.
Kevin doesn't talk about that day much, although his recovery and return to Virginia Tech, first to receive his diploma, again as a graduate student, and now to work as an engineer, speaks volumes.
It was a very familiar place, and I couldn't imagine going somewhere else and starting out new, without any friends or that kind of thing.
Being here, he says, helped him cope. It helped him heal, and perhaps helps him prepare for the 10th anniversary.
It's more of a reflection of past anniversaries even too, what was the first one like and what was the second one, maybe what was the 5th one, what was last year.
This year, things are a little different. Now a father, Kevin says he has new perspective.
Puts it in the perspective of what if that was my son? What if that was? And that's certainly a different take on it that I haven't had yet.
Sunday will be about remembering.
It's remembering all the people that were involved that day, all the people who lost their lives, or the people who helped save me. The first responders and the doctors.
And the people, strangers even, in this community and across the world who offered support.
And then even to the people that, wrote letters, elementary school kids, and stuff that made, up to, 87-year-old grandmas that wrote me a poem and mailed it. It's kind of remembering all that and just being thankful for those people.
Including people like Michael Pole's family, who he only got to know out of tragedy.
Especially now, meeting his family and knowing who he was and that he's no longer here.
Dawn Jeffries with our story. Emergency responders in Blacksburg are also reflecting on that tragic day 10 years ago. Blacksburg Volunteer Rescue Squad EMTs and paramedics were some of the first on the scene. Among them was Sydney Gay. She was just 20 years old at the time and a sophomore EMT at Virginia Tech. She helped transport several of the injured to the hospital and set up a triage command center. Gay says a decade later, the healing process is still difficult, but she also believes that the experience has made her stronger.
I know it made me more resolute in what I wanted to do. I actually began working at the same hospital that we transported all those patients to, largely for that reason. Something in me just felt like I wanted to be here and be able to help if it were to happen again.
Gay participated in the Run in Remembrance on Saturday morning. Well, a known rivalry takes a break this weekend. How the University of Virginia baseball team pays its respects to Virginia Tech. A rivalry is set aside this weekend as the University of Virginia pays its respects to Virginia Tech. In a letter to President Sands, UVA President Teresa Sullivan says the school expresses its deepest empathy on the anniversary of the shootings. She says, quote, "The violence of that day does not and never will define the Virginia Tech community. What defines your community," she says, "is the dignified and resilient manner in which your students, faculty, staff, and alumni have responded to the tragedy in the days and the years that followed." It continues, before that day, the term Hokie Spirit served as a rallying cry for Virginia Tech students, alumni, and fans. After that day, Hokie Spirit became synonymous in many minds with the qualities of unity, resilience, and enduring faith in human perseverance. WSLS 10's Eric Johnson tells us how the Cavaliers baseball team paid tribute to the Hokies this weekend. Eric?
That's right, John. During their recent 3-game series, the UVA Cavaliers decided to pay tribute of the victims of April 16th by placing a special decal on the back of their helmets. And during the final game of the series on Saturday, both Virginia Tech and Virginia wore a special patch on their jerseys as the two schools stood united for the day. It was also First Responders Appreciation Day at English Field. A banner signed by all the participants in the 3.2-mile walk/run and boxed lunches were provided for the first responders. Virginia Tech head baseball coach Patrick Mason says what the Cavaliers did this weekend speaks to the character of their program.
Coach O'Connor runs a first-class program, and the fact that he and his team were willing to wear the patch in honor of the 32 victims speaks worlds of him and their program. It's an important day here on campus. It always will be. I think the character of this community has only gotten stronger and better.
Now, no doubt this was a huge showing of support and respect from UVA. You know, time and time again, John, we see how sports can kind of be a healing agent during tragedies, and obviously this was one that was not an exception.
UVA's president talking about what Hokie Spirit used to mean and what it means now, but it's funny how it sort of transcends, how we all sort of battle in sports, but then we battle life every day.
That's right, and exactly what she said there, that spirit resonates even more so with a larger community and with more teams all across our nation.
Eric Johnson, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Well, baseball teams on the professional level are also commemorating today's anniversary. A moment of silence was held before this afternoon's game between the Washington Nationals and the Philadelphia Phillies. And a moment of silence will also take place before tonight's game between the New York Yankees and the St. Louis Cardinals. As you might remember, the Yankees came to Blacksburg 11 months after the tragedy. The team, including superstars Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez, had an exhibition game with the Virginia Tech baseball team and then visited the April 16th memorial. A symbol of perseverance and strength, the university tradition that shows the resilience of the Virginia Tech community. Virginia Tech's class rings have been a symbol of tradition for more than 100 years. And since the April 16th tragedy, they've been a symbol of remembrance and resilience. Each year, a committee of students designs its own distinct ring in the sophomore year. The class of 2009 rings had already been designed when the April 16th tragedy happened. But the company behind the rings called to ask if students wanted to pay tribute, and they decided to make meaningful changes.
you understood right away from the audience response. And it wasn't like wild cheering, because that wouldn't have been appropriate, but we knew like this was the right thing to do. And it was a good feeling. So they made the decision to...
So the class side of the 09 ring shows the VT ribbon, a symbol created in remembrance of the lives impacted. The opposite side reads, "We will prevail," a quote distinguished by Professor Nikki Giovanni that she read at the convocation the day after the tragedy. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Before we leave you tonight, I want to reflect for a moment on what it was like 10 years ago today. Normally, we here in the news business research a story long before we present it to you. But on April 16th, 2007, we were often learning the facts while we were live on the air. As the numbers of dead rose through unbelievable numbers to unprecedented totals, we learned at the same time the viewers did. There was no heads up or behind-the-scenes briefings. We all learned together of the method of the killings, the chaining of the doors on Norris Hall, the valiant efforts of faculty members who blocked classroom doors with their bodies and gave their lives to keep the gunman out. Many, if not most of us in the newsroom, had significant connections to Virginia Tech. We had friends, family, and in my case, colleagues and students there. I don't mean to suggest that our job was as impossible as those who were on the scene witness to the tragedy and helpless to do anything, even as they saw cell phones ringing beside the bodies of students with caller IDs that said mom or dad. But we know that we, while independent journalists, felt that we were a part of you, suffering, wondering, and mourning beside you, unbelieving not only that it happened, but that it happened here. Now is the 10th anniversary of that day, and we as a community have moved on as best we can. The details and images of that day are no longer daily news, but they are never far from our minds. On behalf of the handful of us who are still at the station and the many others who have moved along their lives' journeys over the past 10 years, I wanted to let you know how difficult that day was here on this side of the camera. Let's hope and pray we never have to go through anything like that again. Thanks for joining us. We'll continue our coverage of the 10th anniversary tonight at 11.